Hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Teaching. My name is Dr. Philippa Fabry, and if you have not come across me before, I'm an education consultant here in Port Elizabeth, and I have made it my life's work and my passion to help and support children and people with neurodiversity, specifically our young people who are sitting in a classroom somewhere. So this evening, Let's Talk Teaching, we're talking about ADHD, harnessing potential and managing pitfalls. And it's wonderful to have everybody online. The response to this webinar has been amazing. It's really just blown me away. And clearly, this is a topic that deserves time and deserves a platform. And so I'm hoping that we can unpack some of the ADHD mystery this evening. And I know that there are teachers here, there are parents here, there are individuals here who are curious to know more about this very, very interesting condition, I suppose we can call it that, or superpower, as some people might say. So let us know where you are. If you are watching, let us know who you are and where you are watching from, so that we can create a community of like-minded people. One of the wonderful parts about doing a masterclass like this is that we can connect with one another and be seen as a group of people who are passionate about neurodiversity and ADHD and all that goes along with that. So let us know where you are watching from. Let us see who is watching. Please let me know if you can hear me fine, if the picture is good. If everything is good, let's have a thumbs up. Let's see who is watching, where the comments are coming from. So I can see as I go through, we have got Ilse, we have got Charmaine, Sherry, Tracy, Clairwyn, Wendy, Malika, we've got Lynn, we've got Nadine, we've got Renee, we've got Leanka, we've got Nadine, Michaela, Mariska, Samantha, hi there, Darlene, L.H. McCoy, we've got Clairwyn, okay, we've said hello, Cindy, Crystal, Edna, Constance, Samoya, I hope I'm saying that right, apologies if I'm not, Augusta, Nicole, Pietra, Precious, Edna, Angela. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. It's so nice to actually be able to see who's watching, because often with these webinars, you never know if anybody's online. So it's lovely to have you on board, and I'm looking forward to this discussion tonight. I see Jennifer's here from Port Elizabeth, Judy's from Cape Town, Melanie, Rosie, Shantae, Nicole, Lara, Tanya, Durban North, wow. Pietra's in PE, Cindy, Suray, Sunika, Renee from Alberton, Charmaine, Beaufort West, Chantal, watching from PE, lovely, Nambita, I hope I say your name right, Johannesburg, Audrey from PE, Mari, grade 4 teacher from PE, hello, Sherry, Christo from George, Bianca from PE. So they're teachers, they're parents. We are really going to be unpacking the ADHD from an educational point of view. So from an academic perspective, helping to navigate the ADHD mystery and helping teachers to be able to help and support children better in the classroom, and helping parents to know how better to support your child, especially if you're having to do homework in the afternoons and your child is tired and the ADHD medication is often worn off and you are trying to now get the best out of them at the end of a busy day. So we will be talking about all of that. I am hoping that my colleague is joining me this evening. So Leandri Becker is an education consultant also from Port Elizabeth, and we were going to be doing this webinar together. And there are lots of questions that have come through from people, which has been wonderful because it means we could plan ahead and make sure that all these questions are being addressed And it's lovely to know that, if we are able to answer questions, it means that you are getting what you have signed up for, which is exactly what I'm wanting, is that you go away from this masterclass knowing a little bit more about ADHD and how better you can help the young people in your life. So you are in the right place. If you're a teacher or someone who is curious about ADHD and you want to know more, so you are in the right place. You are in the right place if you have specific questions about how to help someone with ADHD, or you're looking for tips and tools and strategies to help yourself with ADHD. And you are also in the right place if you aren't sure whether you or someone that you love has ADHD, but you strongly suspect that they do, and you're almost wanting confirmation to take the next step and go and visit a doctor, or go and fill in that questionnaire, or go and make that appointment to go and speak to somebody to see whether there is a diagnosis there. So that is, if you're watching this and you are in the right place, and if those resonate with you, then put your feet up. I hope you've grabbed a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a glass of water, and you are ready to go on this journey with me. And then we can start. So as you can see, I'm going to be putting up some slides so that we can follow along together. And hopefully, at the end, we will have a bonus and a surprise for you. So please stick around. Don't disappear. We will be showing you or giving you something very exciting at the end of this little bit of information together. So stick around. Today, we're talking about harnessing potential and managing pitfalls. So as we go, you can keep a pen and paper close at hand, because you might want to write down something. You might want to make note of something as we go. So let's talk a little bit about what ADHD is. So before we delve into all kinds of medication issues and tips and strategies, let's just have a look at what ADHD is. So the real hallmark of ADHD is that it is not, it's an attention deficit, and it's part of the nervous system. So it has to do with inconsistent attention. Sure, people with ADHD can pay attention, they can focus, but it is inconsistent attention, and it all depends on what they are attending to at the time. So we look at some of the ADHD sort of traits that you might have heard about. We talk about ADHD with hyperactivity. We talk about ADHD with impulsivity. And we talk about ADHD with inattention, not being able to stay focused. And if any of those, if you think your person has more of the ADHD with hyperactivity side, then you can see that they are very excessive fidgeters. They are restless. They often tap their pens or tap their legs, constantly moving around. They're restless, struggle to sit still. They are often excessive talkers, often wanting to blurt into a conversation or blurt out answers. They are often feeling very overwhelmed at times, because so much is happening all at once. So much is happening that they have to try and manage. And so if you look at the inattentive side, so the inattention side of the ADHD, these are people who struggle to sustain attention. Often, these are people who struggle with admin-related tasks. So they can't sit and finish a big chunk of work all at once. They might have to take breaks, or sort of put a timer on so that they can, work for 20 minutes, take a break for 5, and then work for another 20 minutes or whatever it is. So they struggle to stay focused. They are easily distracted. They are often procrastinators. They procrastinate a lot, struggle to get things done. They're very disorganized, executive function skills are not great, they're forgetful, and their workspace or their desks are often untidy. They don't really have much order going. So let's see if I want to just see if I can bring. Okay, so she says she's ready. So sorry, guys. I'm going to bring on Leandri because she needs to be part of this discussion. So hopefully she's going to join me. And I'm going to make the slides slightly different now so that we can have space for her to join. Hi, Leandri. Are you there?
Hi, yes, I am. I see my camera is
Hello.
not working, but that's fine. You
Okay.
don't need to see my face with your beautiful
So you are
slides.
there.
I am
Okay.
here.
So we are
Yes,
talking about the different ADHD types. So
yes.
we're talking about hyperactivity, we're talking about inattention, and now we're talking about impulsivity. So these are the kids who often are your kids who are just going to run across the road. They're often quite accident prone because they don't think before they say something or do something. They are
Mm.
usually have a low frustration tolerance to wait their turn or take turns when they are playing a game. They often lose their temper very fast, and they need immediate gratification. So these are your children who can't wait for something. It has to happen now, not in
As
a few
you
moments. It must happen now.
as you're going through these ones, I am reading through the inattention one, and I can
Mm.
just relate because my husband is exactly like this. He cannot sit, he hates doing admin type of work.
Yes,
He hates sitting
yes.
down. He cannot function if things are standing around. The
I'm
other
also
night,
married to one like
yeah,
that.
yeah. The other night he had to do some of his work admin, and when I got out of because we just had a little baby for the people who's joining now. She's 3 months old. So I was in the room busy with baby, and when I came out, he was packing all our plants in a row to water them, and he was cleaning the
Mm.
house, and he was doing anything else just to
Anything, not
not
to have
sit
to do
at work.
admin. Mm.
Exactly. And I think with little children, you might think that they are naughty, or not wanting to do something or going against what you are asking them to do, being disrespectful or something like that. But it's actually the part of their brains cannot function and focus the way that we do. So
Mm.
if you give them a task to do, it is so difficult for them to actually just
Mm.
get everything straight in their heads and go for
Mm.
it and do the task, whatever you've asked them to do.
Yeah, well, so let's look at some of the pitfalls, right? So some of the pitfalls
Mm.
that somebody with ADHD they would struggle so that the in tray never gets empty. So there's always stuff that has to happen tomorrow because you haven't finished what you have had to do today. So difficulty remembering steps. I mean, you can see all the sort of pitfalls there, not being able to finish things, being able to meet deadlines is difficult. They're often late for meetings, difficulty remembering important information. That is a typical list of somebody who is struggling with executive function disorder or your typical ADHD type profile, are all those pitfalls and how to manage them. I don't know if you want to add any there, but I mean that's quite a big list. But it's
Mm.
often frustrating for the person, especially the person who doesn't know that it is ADHD, because they feel so useless and you're constantly putting yourself down that I'm not good enough, or what is wrong with me that I can't be on time for meetings? What is wrong with me that I keep losing my keys? What is wrong with me that I can't seem to get it together and everybody else around me seems so all together, but I'm, running around like a chicken without a head. And it's those people that end up going to see a therapist or a psychiatrist because they feel so down on themselves, and they often get diagnosed with depression or anxiety when actually, it's an ADHD, and then the medication is just like trying to put a band-aid on a wound instead of trying to treat the wound, and try and see what the cause is. You know, so those are just some of the pitfalls and the frustrations that somebody with ADHD might be experiencing.
I think that they do feel like they just never get ahead of anything because nothing ever gets done completely. And most of the time, they are very perfectionistic, so they want to do something properly. So they won't do well, not all of them, but sometimes they won't. When they start with something, they will focus on that, and then get distracted. So it feels like they are not completing a task before going to the next. And usually,
Yeah.
because there are so many things going around, or so many things that they have to do, they do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of the next thing, and they don't complete anything as it should be. So
They
I think
constantly
I
feel like
think
they're chasing their tail all the
exactly, yeah.
time.
So they just never get ahead of anything.
So if we have a look at some of the questions that we've had. So I think we've been chatting about ADHD in general, and some of the things that I mentioned, could be what an adult might struggle with. But I think a lot of the questions that were coming through were from a parent or a teacher wanting to know how better to support a child with ADHD. So I've got one, or do you want to read the first one by it's Riona that sent in a
Yeah.
question?
Tell me, Philippa, did you explain to them why ADD fell away, or should I quickly?
No, you
Did you
can go there.
mention?
You can do that. Yeah, thanks.
Okay,
You can
so
do that.
so we usually in the past we had ADD and ADHD, but we have taken away ADD and we only focus on ADHD now. If you go back to that slide with the inability and the hyperactivity and things like that, so ADHD is your umbrella term that we use now, even if you do have children with the inattention and the impulsivity and the hyperactivity. So an ADHD child won't necessarily have all of the above. So they won't have inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. They might be your daydreamer child, or they might be the child that cannot sit still. So you've got a spectrum, but they've taken away the ADD. So ADD stood for attention deficit disorder, and then ADHD has a hyperactivity part included in the term. So they've taken away ADD just to include all in ADHD, but that does not mean that we only focus on children who's got the hyperactivity part as well. So it might be your
Yeah.
child who's very quiet, sitting in the back of the class. You think that they are doing well, and then by the time you mark their assessment, you figure out that they didn't understand much or they didn't complete any of the work. But it might be that child that just disappears because they daydream, so they are quiet, and you don't even notice it until it's almost too late.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so
So
your
that
first
first
question.
question, yes.
So the first question is, if I suspect a child has ADHD in my class, how do I address the issue with the parents? Oh, this is always a difficult one,
Yes, it
talking to
is
parents.
difficult because you can't say that you think it's ADHD. So this is a question from Riona. So thanks for that question. So I think best to always play open cards, and your first sort of port of call would be to call in the parents for a meeting and or send an email, but preferably a meeting is always better. And you just start by saying something positive about how the child has been doing. So you always start off with something positive, where they have made progress, or something that makes the parent feel relaxed. As soon as you call them in, they're going to be anxious and they're going to think the worst. So always start off a meeting with a parent with something positive, and then you could say that you've noticed certain things that the child is doing, or you worried about how they are behaving or how they are speaking to their classmates, and it might be impacting on their work. So you really just talking about what you are observing in class, what you are seeing. How is it impacting on their progress? Are they getting into arguments frequently? Do they blurt out answers without giving anyone a chance? Is their work messy and untidy? These are the things that you are seeing. And you can have done a little checklist that you can bring along to the meeting where you've just ticked off what you've noticed. So the sort of common traits of what you're seeing in the classroom, you can bring that list along, and you can bring proof, you can bring work that the child has done, and you can show the parents what you're seeing. And you can say things like, I think he or she is underachieving because of these issues that they're struggling with. And then you talk about what you have tried to do in class to help. So maybe you've tried to have the child moving around, not just sitting still at their desk. You've tried to give the child something to fiddle with so that they're not tapping their pen or irritating the person sitting next to them. So you've tried these tips and strategies by bringing in some things that you feel might help the child to just focus their attention easier. It could also be things like giving them or putting them somewhere in the classroom where they're away from distraction. So don't put a child who's easily distracted by the door, or by a window when everybody is walking past. So you've tried to minimize distraction as much as possible. And maybe when you're giving instructions or you're giving a series of things for the child to do, that you're giving them a visual reminder. You're not just expecting them to remember 5 or 6 things. You've maybe written them down, or you've given them a visual timetable, whatever it is. These are things that you've done to help. And then you could sort of end the conversation by saying, listen, I'm going to monitor it for a little bit longer. If you think that if there's anything you're struggling with at home, is there anything that you're doing at home that might help me in class? Or am I noticing something at school that isn't happening at home? Or is it also happening at home? So you can kind of ask the parent if they're also noticing these things that you're noticing. And then you just say, I'm going to just keep an eye on things for a little while. And maybe if things haven't really improved, would you consider taking your child to go and have an assessment or to go and speak to the doctor, because there might be something there. And it could be something as simple as low iron or an incorrect diet or not getting enough sleep or something that is lacking that, you could just get that checked. And then it doesn't have to be, I'm labeling your child with ADHD, but it's, I'm noticing these things. This is what I've tried. What are you seeing at home? Let's monitor it and work together and see if things don't improve within the next couple of weeks. And I think that's the best way of trying to sort of get the parent to buy in that you're also trying to help in class.
I think
So
it's
yeah.
always important for a teacher to remember that they do have the school-based support team as well. So you could always go to your school-based support team, ask them for advice as well, incorporate those strategies in your classroom, and they will probably refer you to a multidisciplinary team. Maybe they do have someone like a remedial therapist at the school who might be able to help, or to sit in with a meeting and explain to a parent. Then it's not coming from you as a teacher. Everything is not coming from you as a teacher. So
Yeah.
maybe they've got psychologists or OTs or anyone at school who might be able to also help the child, with the parent's permission, obviously. But I think as a teacher approaching a parent, mostly parents whose children has got ADHD, one of those parents will have it too. So because it's hereditary. So I
Yeah.
think they will be very aware of the struggles that you face in class, because they will be facing that at home as well. So I think if you start mentioning the way that the child has been acting in your class, they would be very open. Hopefully, they will be very open to help. Not all parents are, but I think if you know it's a parent who's not going to be very open to your suggestions, maybe ask one of the school-based support team members to sit in with you and to just
And have a
support you.
meeting. Yeah,
Mm.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I also just want to say before we go on to the next question, there are a couple of comments coming in where people are asking if this will be recorded. So it
And
is
then
being recorded.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't see the comments of the Oh, here it is. Sorry.
So
Um,
it is being recorded. You can watch this recording again using the same link that you used to register. The recording will be available for the next couple of days, so you will be able to go through everything again. And then question 2. We've got a question 2
question
from Cecilia,
two
which I've actually just
from
combined them
Cecilia.
into 2.
Oh, I
Cecilia
see.
and
Yeah,
Ilse.
Ilse and
I've just,
Cecilia.
it's basically the same question.
So Cecilia asked, How do I know if my son is having a genuine meltdown from his ADHD or just misbehaving? And then Ilza asked, and how do I help my child with emotional regulation and being more tolerant of others? I actually read an interesting study the other day from the Brain Ability, and they did a study in 2017. Um, I think it was with about 500 children who was formerly diagnosed with ADHD, and across their lifespan, it says that the cognitive deficits in clients with ADHD were working memory and long-term memory and processing speed, and not actually attention. So, just going back to our previous question, sorry, I just wanted to mention it quickly. Um, Working on something like working memory and processing speed is also important to incorporate that in your classroom when you think a child has ADHD, to work on that and to see if something improves um, before we say that you might think it is ADHD. But yeah, let's quickly go through the question number two. Um,
Yeah.
must,
So, how do I help my child with emotional regulation and me being more tolerant of others? So, again, emotional regulation. So, it's normal for children around the age of 2 to have tantrums and to struggle with managing their big emotions. It's when these go further than the age of 5 or 6. So, starting school, where these big tantrums, uncontrollable sort of outbursts, and crying for endless, not being able to console or redirect the child's attention. So having these huge big meltdowns, we call them meltdowns. So what is the difference between a meltdown and a tantrum? They often say a tantrum a child can control and they can stop if they are distracted. A meltdown they almost don't have control over. So they have to it has to run its course until the child is sort of so exhausted that they eventually come out of the meltdown, and it's due to just overstimulation, too much sensory input, and those sort of issues that come along with sensory integration issues. But usually a child with emotional dysregulation, they can't seem to monitor and manage their emotions. So the way that you help a child with that is they call it scaffolding. And basically it's breaking, if you can preempt when you're going to see a big meltdown or a tantrum, you're going to have to scaffold the task into smaller, more bite-sized, easier chunks so that the child doesn't have to climb Mount Everest. It's more like, let's just go to base camp, So it's, what are these huge, big issues that the child is struggling with? And how do we break those down into easier tasks that they can achieve? And then it's about coaching them through each little section of that task and giving them positive feedback, constantly coaching them through, sometimes even doing a dry run. So, a dry run meaning expose your child to that sort of trigger when they're in a good mood or when they're not overtired and hungry, and expose them to it so it's almost as if they desensitize themselves to when it really does happen. So doing these dry runs where you're just giving them an opportunity to learn and watch how you manage your emotions, and you are the coach. So breaking it down, scaffolding, and then doing dry runs so that you are talking them through the issues when it's not too late and they are already in that stage of dysregulation, when the child is more tolerant and open to learning, I would say.
yes,
All
and I
right.
think
And then
as they
question
grow
3.
older,
Yeah.
I think as they grow
Yes.
older, they also gain the ability to self-regulate a little bit more.
Yes.
I think it's when they are a little bit younger when we see the meltdowns um, happen more often. I see Samaya asked here, is it not illegal to suggest that a child may be ADHD? Yes. So, as a teacher, you are not qualified to make any sort of diagnosis. And I don't think that the words ADHD should come from your mouth. I think you might just suggest that they struggle with A, B, and C, and you have tried to incorporate it this and this and this, and then suggest for them to go to have it checked out with the
To get an
OT or
assessment.
yes.
Yes.
the educational psychologist. So usually we refer them to the educational psychologist first, and they can do a full assessment, and they would be able to then either refer or to make a diagnosis, and then we can take it from there. But as a teacher, we're not qualified to actually make a
No,
diagnosis or to say that the child has dyslexia, ADHD, autism, or any of the above. Yeah.
that's correct. All
Yes.
right, so
Okay.
Tanya
So
and Rosie, I put their questions together as well because they're also quite similar.
Okay, so she says, I am a mom with a 10-year-old ADHD boy and struggling with exam prep. And then, do you have any tips on how to help him except for cramming, which seems to be the only thing that he can do at the moment, and remembering what is said in class? And then Rosie asked, I want to know how to help my grade 7 child study. This is such a frustration and feels like I'm spending all my time making voice recordings and summarizing his work just to receive test bags with bad marks. How can I help him cope?
Shame.
Yeah.
Yes, and I must say, coming from a mom who's also been through grade 7 and making voice recordings and summaries and mind maps and all of that, I can totally understand where you're coming from. When you put all that effort in and you don't see the rewards in the report, it can seem frustrating. But I think if you just almost reframe studying with spending quality time together doing schoolwork with your child. So studying is a way that if your child requires you to help them, use that quality time and do things together and somehow make it interesting and fun. So I used to go and get snacks from the shop and little packets of sweeties and things like that. And I used to use those to almost chunk the time into we're going to do 20 minutes and then you're going to have this snack. And we're going to do another 20 minutes and then you can have this little piece of chocolate. And so we used to just use it as bribery, call it what you like, but it used to work because he would look forward to having that little break. And so depending on the subject that you were doing, whether it was discussing something or whether it was drawing the picture or whether it was dramatizing what was happening, we used all kinds of different ways to learn and understand the work. So voice recordings are great if your child has an auditory strength and understands what he hears. But if your child is more visual, those voice recordings are not going to be as effective because his way of learning is more through what he sees than what he hears. So just make sure that you know how your child sort of receives information best and use that learning mode or learning method that suits him best. If it's maths, you're not going to be doing voice recordings. If it's maths, he's going to be practicing work and writing and doing. But if it's, let's say, history, a voice recording might be a good way of explaining a certain story that happened in the history. So just know what works and use what is working. And if it's not working, then find another way because it's a long way to be trying to use a method that might suit you but doesn't suit your child's learning brain. So just an FYI there. And
Yes,
then
I
we just
think,
need to move quickly through. I'm just
yeah.
mindful of the time, but we can go and do one more, I think. Let's
Yes,
do the side
just
effects of Concerta.
just on what you just said, I think just
Yes.
remembering that divided attention, like splitting attention between tasks, I think just helping your child not to see studying as this pile of work, because as we said earlier, they struggle to break it up for themselves to make it easier. So I think if you could be the person saying, okay, today for 10 minutes we are doing this, and then we're taking a break, and then we are doing this, just for you, in order for you to help them order their work and to place it into manageable pieces.
But
I think that is important for a child with ADHD.
yes, because they're going to struggle with things like that. So that's where you as the PA almost has to come in and help with the routine and the structure
Yes,
and putting things down into a sort of visual spreadsheet, if you will, so that they can see
yes,
exactly what they have to accomplish. All right,
yes, definitely.
let's do the Let's do question 6. How do I help teens with ADHD?
Okay, so how do I help a teen with ADHD in a large classroom? That comes from Carla.
So we're talking about teenagers. We're talking about the the pubescent, pre-adolescent kids who are now in high school, going into the upper primary and high school stages. And yeah, sure, ADHD is still a factor, even though the parents are not as involved perhaps than they were in primary school, and even though the teachers are not as willing to stretch out a hand and help children. We expect them to now just know how to do everything because now they're in high school. But I think we must just be mindful that a child with ADHD becomes a teenager with ADHD, becomes an adult with ADHD, and so they will always need tips and tools and strategies to help. So I would say there, children are going to struggle to
Anyone?
is
Philippa?
not there.
Oh.
Hello?
No,
Can you
I'm
hear
not
me?
sure if the signal on your side, because you just stopped there for a moment on my side, but I'm not sure if it's me or you. But you can continue.
Oh,
Sorry.
I hope I'm better. Okay, I hope
Yes.
I'm better.
Okay,
So
sorry.
yeah, so just noticing when a child is spacing out and that they are there, but they're not, they're physically there, but they're not. Their brain has clocked out for a minute. So not to call them out in class and not to make them feel embarrassed, but just to maybe go to the desk, touch the desk, and bring them back, make eye contact, not to sort of belittle them in front of everybody else. A child like that might just need extra attention to make sure that they're not getting lost, or, as you say, the ADD children, the kids with the inattention that often just slide under the radar because they're not hyperactive and they're not loud and boisterous. They are the quiet sort of ones who, like slide under the radar. And so just to be mindful, I suppose, just to be a teacher that has kindness and compassion, that you don't embarrass. So feeling so insecure already because they're in this phase of teenagers where everything is a big thing. So do your best to just help them with the executive function, help them with being organized, their time management, giving them deadlines, helping them with calendars and reminders, setting notifications on their phones. Most of them have got phones. Use Google Calendar to put in notifications where they get reminded when things are due. Those are the kind of things that a teacher can help with.
And what I've done, because I'm a lecturer at the university here in PE as well at NMU, and what I've done with my students who has ADHD, I give them time and space to come and see me afterwards. So if they felt that they didn't follow me or didn't understand the instruction, that they could come and approach me. So I think just be open to children with ADHD coming to ask you questions over and over, and you have to explain it in many different ways until they understand and fully grasp what's expected of them. Because I've got with this one student, and she will come and ask me 5 questions in a different way, the same question in 5 different ways, and I have to answer it in 5 different ways, and then she actually just makes sense of it, and then she understands it, and she can go on. I think if you do not create space for them to come and approach you in a private manner, because they won't, most of them, if they are the quiet type of ADHD, they won't ask you in a class. If they feel
They'll
like
be too
everyone else is
embarrassed.
understanding what you are saying, they won't ask you. So I think just be open to explain something in many different ways to children.
Yes.
Okay, so our next
Let's
question.
do question 7.
Yeah, so what are the side effects of Concerta and Ritalin? Yo, there are
Yes,
so
that
many
was from
different
Lorraine.
types. It's from Lorraine.
So
Bruce
I'm not going to
Christina
go into too much detail here. I think what I do want to say is that ADHD medication works in 80% of people. So between 8, I would say 8 out of 10 people, the medication will work for. But it's not a cure. So it doesn't take away the ADHD completely. All it does is it reduces some of the symptoms while it is active in the body. So the one thing that we need to just understand is that the stimulants, which are your Concerta and your Ritalin, they are stimulant medication which start working straight away. So almost the short-acting methylphenidate, or that's the generic of Ritalin, when you take it, within sort of 20, 30 minutes, depending on the child's metabolism, that medication has already started working. And so the child will immediately start feeling the whether they are able to concentrate now, or they are more motivated, or whatever it is. So the stimulant medication, your Ritalin and your Concerta, whether it's long-acting or short-acting, they start working straight away. Whereas your non-stimulants, which is your Strattera, and I'm not going to talk too much about the non-stimulants because there are other ones that I probably don't know, but those are the ones that you generally can't take a break from. So you can't have weekends off or holidays off, because they only start working after a couple of weeks. So it's just to be aware of the different types of medication. Sometimes the stimulant medication can affect or can push anxiety up a little bit, whereas the Strattera doesn't seem to have the same effect on anxiety if there's an underlying anxiety happening. And then also, the main side effects that parents complain about or children complain about is they don't have an appetite, and they might struggle with sleep if they're taking the medication in the afternoon too late. Those are the main side effects. But I think generally speaking, the body is able to tolerate the right amount as long as the doctor is listening to what the patient or the child or the parent is saying, and can adjust the dosage according to how the person is feeling. Let's just talk about question 8, and then I think we're going to go into the last section of the webinar. So we had a question about the strengths.
Yeah, so what are some of the strengths of someone with ADHD? I think we tend to focus on...
I think we've lost your sound, Leandri.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Are you there? Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes. No, I just think that we tend to focus on all the negatives of ADHD, but there are many positives and strengths, and we should, as teachers, use that, and parents, use that in order to help us navigate children with ADHD. So you can go through them, Philippa.
Yeah, I think we're talking about people who are able to hyper-focus. So specifically if you're working on a project and you're needing somebody to be able to work long hours to get the deadline, to get the job done, somebody with ADHD will be able to hyper-focus on that project, see it through the night and finish, because they have that superpower to be able to just get it done, focus and get it done. They are incredibly resilient. These people are often, they persevere, they have that grit where they can just keep going, tenacious to the end, perseverance like you have no idea. They are often empathetic and very generous. They are people. They are creative. They're very, they can think out of the box, ingenious thinking often. They have a strong sense of fairness, and they will speak out if somebody is not being treated correctly or fairly. They are willing to take risks. They're not scared of taking risks and maybe making a mistake or getting something wrong. And they have a sense of humor. So those are just some of the, I'm sure there are lots more, spontaneous and have a witty sense of humor. So those are just some of the superpowers of ADHD. And then the last slide that I just want to share is when we're talking about harnessing potential, we're talking about the person who cannot pay attention at a boring meeting, but is often able to hyper-focus for hours on end when working on a project that interests them or stimulates them. So in a crisis situation, these are the people who think quickly and can act quickly and jump in and take the lead. So your firefighters and your people who work in the emergency room and your ambulance, your ER people, they are often on the go, ready to act, ready to jump in when needed. Their overactivity pays dividends as they can continue with physical work long after other people have crashed and gone to sleep. And then we know people who have ADHD who have gone on to do incredible things. We don't need to talk too long about Steve Jobs and Sir Richard Branson and your Thomas Edison and Albert Einstein. The list goes on and on. They were all said to have ADHD. So those are just some of the potential, the harnessing of the superpowers that we are talking about. So, Leandri, any closing thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, I just think that people with ADHD, they are highly intelligent. As you said, they can hyperfocus. They can manage tasks if they are interested in it. So I don't think we should, as teachers, always see the negative. You can always use their strengths and positives in your classroom to make the classroom environment better for yourself and for the child. I think using it. I was a grade 1 teacher a few years back, and I had a little boy who did that, and I just used all his energy and his strengths in order to help me in the class. So if I had to send someone to the office, then I would ask him to do it. If we had like little breaks between sessions, and he could be the little leader jumping up and down in front of the class and singing and clapping, and and
Yes.
really changed his whole personality and outlook on being at school. Because at first he didn't want to be there because he had to sit in a little chair at a desk for the first time. He wanted to play outside, but when we started using his strengths, it really did make a difference, and he did very well in school academically. I know it's grade 1. You can't really measure it for his whole school career, but I do think, especially with foundation phase, it's very important to just love those children and to use everything and to teach them how to regulate and to use their own strengths in order for them to help.
100%.
I'm going to quickly answer a few questions here in the comments, so you can leave me on for just a few
Okay.
minutes, and then I'll quickly respond to that, and then I will leave as soon as I can because I can hear my little baby is starting to
Okay.
become hungry. Okay,
Okay.
but thank you.
So I'll just mute you then.
Perfect. I'm quickly going to
All
answer a few
right.
things.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
thanks for your help. It was wonderful to see you and
It's a
hear you again.
pleasure. Yes, I've been out for a
Go well.
while. Okay,
You
bye.
have. Good to have you back. All
Thanks.
right. So, as we get to the end, I said I had a surprise, and I wanted to talk about a bonus. And usually, when we do these webinars, they are, as I said in the beginning, it's usually of an academic sort of standard, and we talk about classroom, and we talk about school, and we talk about learning, and we talk about, as parents, how you can help and support your children, and it's usually from an educational side of things. But we've recently started to collaborate with medical practitioners, and you may have attended our Beating Burnout webinar that we did last month, I think it was, where I was joined by Valine Wiggle, the occupational therapist, and we spoke about burnout. And it was just so nice because bringing the medical side to marry with the educational side, speaking about teachers and how they were struggling with burnout, and Valine was able to talk about what she sees in her practice and how she helps and treats patients with burnout, and putting the two together just made it, it completed the puzzle, so to speak. So I'm very, very excited, and I want to introduce somebody that I've been chatting to over the last while. And what we've done is we've decided to create another webinar series, and it's Dr. De Lange. I'm going to bring her onto the stage, Dr. Regina De Lange. Hello.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Hello, we can hear you. We can hear you, and it's
Right.
perfectly fine.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks
So
so much.
we've been chatting a little bit about how to bring the two pieces of the puzzle again together. The ADHD sort of within the classroom, and what teachers are struggling with and what parents are struggling with what you are seeing in practice So tell us a little bit, Dr. De Lange, about you and your practice.
Yes. Thanks. Yes, I'm Dr. Regina De Lange, and I'm a specialized GP working in mental health, and I've got a special interest in neurodivergence. So I do see a lot of that in my practice. And I follow quite a holistic approach or multidimensional, where I always try and do my assessments and treatment plans from all possible angles, so that it's not just focused on medication as the only solution, because as you mentioned, I just heard the last bit of the talk now. It's not always, it doesn't work for 100% of people, and there are side effects and things. So I'm looking very forward to the 2 webinars we're going to do in November, and we'll be focusing on or maybe you can introduce that, then I'll elaborate a bit.
Yes. So what we decided to do was to break it up into 2 parts, specifically because what we're seeing children with ADHD. So in other words, the school-going child and adolescent. And then we wanted to also do a section or a part helping the adult with ADHD. And so we divided up the content like that. So it's really just living with ADHD, but as a child, from the child's perspective, and how parents can sort of help and support. And then as an adult, part 2, living with ADHD as an adult, and how to manage life and your lifestyle, and all the things that go around being an adult and a work, being able to be a productive person at work. So maybe, Dr. De Lange, can we talk a little bit about some of the issues that we'll be chatting about in part 1 when we're talking about the child?
Yeah, so for the child and the adolescent, I think we'll focus a lot on advice for parents, and just in terms of educating or just touching again on how the diagnosis should be made, the things that should be excluded, because there's some things that can mimic it, overlap conditions or conditions that go together with it, and then all the different, and sometimes tests need to be done. So we'll go into those things, and then the medication options, maybe myths around the medications, as well as different options of medications, side effects, and even other medications that sometimes come into play, but also supplements, natural treatments, as well as nutrition and diet. That's very important. So we'll have a look at that. I'll also touch on sleep hygiene, and then screen time, the importance of that. I think that's quite a big topic these days. And we'll look at things like habits and routine and structure, just a few things around that. Some therapies that are available, some older, more conventional therapies, some more novel therapies that are still being researched. And exercise, that's another big leg of it that I always look at that. And I think that would be, and just a few tools for parenting in general around these different aspects or angles.
And that's a jam-packed part 1, and that's on the 13th. So the first webinar, part 1, is on the 13th of November, and I've put the link on the screen. So take a screenshot with your phone or write this down if you want to register for the webinar on the 13th. This is the link that you will register. And I'm going to leave it up there while we talk about part 2, which is now focusing on the adult with ADHD.
Yes, so for the adult, I'm going to focus, so a lot of the same topics that I just mentioned, because as you mentioned earlier as well, ADHD is there as a child, as an adolescent, as an adult. It just, it can change over the life course. So in the adult section, we will talk about women in specifically, and look at hormones through the menstrual cycle, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, that sort of across the lifespan, how ADHD symptoms can change, and what the different challenges are around those different times in life for women specifically. And I think also another thing that I will touch on there would be substances, along with the screen time again, but other substances that can be comorbid with an ADHD diagnosis, and things like alcohol and various others. So we'll definitely have a chat about that. And again, the diagnosis in adults, because it can be quite difficult. The diagnosis is a bit more intricate, a bit more. Sometimes there's other things at the same time, so you have to exclude a lot of other mental health conditions, but also physical conditions. So we'll go into detail with that, and also things about something about burnout prevention. I think that is sort of a topic that goes on throughout life, and there's various, I think all the topics that will be discussed will contain some ideas for burnout prevention.
Yeah, it's so vital, especially this time of year. I think we're
Yes.
all limping to the end. And then I'm going to pop up just the information about the webinar. So it's on the 12th. Hold on, let me just get the banner out the way now because it's blocking the date. So the webinar is on the 13th of November, part 1, and part 2 is going to be on the 20th of November, which is the adult, is more focused on the adult with ADHD. So have a look at those dates and put them in your diary now. 13th of November, 6 o'clock. It's going to be a webinar just like this on StreamYard. And we will then also have slides, and we will make available some bonuses as well at the end that you can use and download, and hopefully there will be strategies and tools that you can take away with you. So just again, the 13th of November, children and adolescents and all the issues that go along with a child struggling at school and with social peer groups, coping with work, studies, lifestyle, diet, nutrition, sleep, screens, all those issues that Dr. De Lange mentioned, we'll be talking about on the 13th. And then on the 20th, it's going to be adults with ADHD. And I'm going to pop the link again so that you can take a screenshot of that, because you do need to register in order to be able to get the link to join the webinars. So it's a 2-part series. If you want to just join for the one on the 13th, you can do so. If you want to join for both, you can do so as well. And then, as promised, I've got a folder that I'm going to pop up here as well. And what I've tried to do is put as many resources that I think would be applicable. After we've chatted this evening, we've spoken about priorities, we've spoken about organization skills, executive function, we've spoken about all the issues with regards to how to sort of checklist yourself, a self-test, or somehow being able to identify symptoms that are related to what you are currently experiencing, or your behavior and things that you are experiencing as an adult with ADHD or as a child with ADHD. So there is a folder that you can also just take a screenshot, write it down, and you are able to then download these resources. The folder is called ADHD File, and that is available for you to download as a gift, staying until the end of the webinar. That is for you to use and hopefully get benefit out of it. It's just tips and strategies and tools that will help you. And we will make some available as well on the 13th and the 20th. Dr. De Lange, is there anything else before we say goodbye to you and say goodbye to everybody? I just wanted to say, if there are people that have questions that were unanswered, please, we are going to keep the chat going. If you want to hop off and you haven't had your question answered, pop it into the chat and we will try and answer it before we say goodbye. But any last thoughts or last comments, Dr. De Lange?
Yeah, no, nothing specific. I'm very excited to do the talks, and looking forward to it. If anyone has any questions around those few topics that I mentioned that they would like to ask beforehand, they could send it through, and then I will have a look at it and try and incorporate it as well.
Yeah, I think it helps for us to just know ahead of time so that we can plan accordingly and make sure that those issues are are managed and handled in the webinar. So just again, I'm going to put up that link to register for the webinar. It's 197 Rand per webinar or 350 if you register for both. The registration form is there. Take a screenshot, type it in now. You can register immediately tonight, and then we will make sure that the link, you get sent the link, and we will see you on the 13th and then again on the 20th. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. De Lange. I will chat to you very, very soon.
Okay.
Thanks for being here. Bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye. Okay, guys, so I'm going to put up that once again, that little information about the webinar so that you can register for that. I think it's going to be fantastic because we now have the medical side of things. So we want to speak about different medications. We want to speak about how to manage ADHD. If we don't want to go the medication route, what other options are there? We want to be able to help and support our loved ones. If we're married to somebody with ADHD, or you have ADHD in the house and it's difficult to sort of manage things, this is one webinar where we want it to be almost you have a doctor in the house. You have two doctors in the house where you can ask your questions and get those questions answered. So I would really encourage you to register for that. The link is still on the screen. Register for that. We will not leave you hanging. There will be bonuses as well, things that you can do at home to manage and support the household. And thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful this evening, having Leandri on the call, having Dr. De Lange on the call, and hopefully you will join us on the 13th of November. So thank you very much, and we will see you soon. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye now.